controversial feelings to people in the United States due to terrorism and people directly associating Islam with terrorism.
I feel like that's really one class of people that are really misrepresented in media, and that's something that needs to change.
But I think historically speaking, a lot of things are overlooked, and a lot of advancements and a lot of progress is really discounted just because it's associated with Islam as a religion, and it's not really given a fair chance to be considered.
There have been a lot of voices from within the Muslim world that have protested against acts of violence, radicalism, and extremism. And that, unfortunately, is not being shown enough in the media. So I oftentimes come across people who say, why hasn't there been enough condemnation of terrorism or extremism in the Muslim world? And I say, there has been a lot. So many different scholars and writers and authors and average people have written and talked and protested and demonstrated against all acts of violence, extremism, and terrorism. In fact, recently, just I think a couple of months ago, there has been a big rally in the heart of Washington, D.C., right in front of the White House, by a group of Muslim scholars and religious people and Muslim activists and ordinary people raising banners against the group Boko Haram and saying that these actions are completely un-Islamic and have nothing to do with the faith, and asking for the return of the girls who were kidnapped. And one interesting sign actually read, Boko Haram is Buku Haram, which means it's very, very haram or very forbidden. So I think it's important to also, whenever these acts of protest or objection to terrorist acts and fanaticism are there, that the media should also acknowledge that this has been taking place, and that there have been Muslim voices that have been really raised against all of these acts, because the public needs to know that this has been done and such actions have been actually taking place.
For people to say that Islam doesn't support Western education or doesn't support education, kind of with everything going on right now, people being taken out of being productive members of society and going to do these horrendous crimes and taking away for what we're meant to do, the first few words that actually the Prophet Muhammad received was listen and read and recite.
For us, it's like a huge deal to read, to be literate, to study, and that's what we constantly remind our kids, so that they think it's a very holy activity to become knowledgeable.
A lot of us are brought up with the misconception that nothing really went on in the world between the end of the Roman Empire and the beginning of the Renaissance. But the truth of the matter is, between that period, it's often referred to as the Islamic Golden Age. There was a broad range of scientific discoveries, art, literature, and so forth during that period of time.
The center of learning was the Muslim world, that people would seek to send anyone who wanted to advance in different areas, whether it was chemistry or algebra, whether it was mathematics, or whether it was engineering. It would send them to centers that were actually established by Muslims.
Much of the knowledge that we built on in the West, that people in the Renaissance period, for instance, built on, is actually was only available because of translations, because of that transfer of knowledge that happened via these scientists in the Abbasid Caliphate. So you have several aspects here. You have, on the one hand, a multi-religious society, definitely with Muslims on top of that society. Muslims dominate it. Muslims are the ones who rule, are the ones who are in command and who have primacy over everything else. But there is a strong element of tolerance, also of mutual respect, specifically for the knowledge and capacities that members of other religions bring to the table. So that's one element. The other element is that Arab science in the Arabic language, the classical works of science, the classical works of philosophy, are a very important conduit for the transfer of knowledge from late antiquity.
It's a bit hard to believe now, but cities like Baghdad and Cairo were essentially the Silicon Valleys of the world at that time.
Often we feel or are told that there's an inherent clash between faith and science. And indeed, there was a lot of value placed on scientific method and research and so forth that was faith-based or rooted in an idea of getting closer to the Creator and examining His creation.
So, you think about all of these different scientists and scholars who are really multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary in their area of specialization expertise, and their many, many numerous contributions to Western civilization. You ask yourself, why aren't these people and others given enough credit and enough acknowledgement in the media?
So-called Islam critics who say, Islam as a religion, and all of Islam, is stuck in the Middle Ages, and it needs a reformation, parallel to the Reformation that takes place in Europe in the 15th century.
Like recently, last year, I got asked a really interesting question in class, like in front of all of my students. I got asked how old I thought the Earth was, and I thought that was a really, really interesting question, why it was directed at me. And I answered, the 4.3 billion years that scientists tell us it is. But it made me question whether I was taken seriously as an intellectual, as a scholar.
The thing is, it's not true, The thing is that Muslim intellectuals are very active in terms of thinking about their place in the world and thinking about the place their religion can, or the role that their religion can play in debates about secularism, about all sorts of 20th century philosophy that has threatened the position of religion in the Western world.
And what's interesting about the Quran is that it constantly addresses the intellect. It constantly addresses those who ponder, those who think deeply, those who use their intellectual capabilities to make sense of the world. And so to deny that in the name of Islam is lacking. It's lacking an understanding of the fundamentals of Islam.
There are explicit statements that warning against going to extremes where one goes beyond the bounds in their religion. And this is a precedent that's set clearly by the Prophet Muhammad himself, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we say that the lack of Islamic education is actually what has led to extremism, not the other way around. There are people who think that going to the Islamic school is what breeds it. Actually, a miseducation or a shortcoming in education is what leads to this. That's the main point I wanted to make very clear. And I think that's lost on many.
All these verses are in the Quran, in black and white, signs in the heavens and the earth for those who reflect, for those who think, rather than for those who have faith. It's like for those who use their minds, if you look at the translation. So we really emphasize to our students that this is a duty for you to learn and to understand, investigate, research. It's part of your religious duty.
And I feel it's very important for scholars and academics to really not just be academics in the ivory tower of academia, but also to be public intellectuals who are able to offer help to their own community and their own society as much as possible. Academic work is very demanding and it takes a lot of time and effort, but I always believe that whatever we can do out there to the community in terms of helping our society, our community to the best of our ability, that is really very valuable because it brings about the application of whatever theoretical knowledge we have into the real world.
Our students learn activism, like from the get-go. We're always doing stuff. We're fundraising, we're doing programs, we're if there's social justice issues to talk about, the Patriot Act, all that stuff, political involvement, civil liberties, advocating for that, they see it right in front of them. Like, they see it all the time. So they're being raised with this awareness that we need to be involved and engaged and not be run over as well.
I've been a pretty active member in an organization called United Muslim Relief. And so United Muslim Relief focuses on integrating our faith with education and community service. So we usually have our big event each year is an event called Rise for the Brave. And we've been able to raise over $130,000 over the course of the past 3 events that support refugees in Syria. And during the school year, we usually have about 2-3 events each semester that support a very broad range of humanitarian causes, both locally and internationally.
And I feel it's very important for scholars and academics to really not just be academics in the ivory tower of academia, but also to be public intellectuals who are able to offer help to their own community and their own society as much as possible. Academic work is very demanding and it takes a lot of time and effort, but I always believe that whatever we can do out there to the community in terms of helping our society, our community to the best of our ability, that is really very valuable because it brings about the application of whatever theoretical knowledge we have into the real world.
Causes both locally and internationally.
My mosque went down to Haiti in the islands when there was natural disasters, and they go and give basically free health care and set up almost minute clinics, but for months, and just take supplies from here and get donations from the different Muslim doctors that we have within our congregation and branching out to other Islamic groups and taking the free healthcare, taking it to these countries that don't have anything with zero cost to them. And I think when you're in Pakistan, countries like that, you don't have those free resources. You don't have those highly educated people who are able to branch out and not only give back to others, but give back to the globe.
So using that mindset, I think that every opportunity that you have to learn and Boko Haram is kind of like classifying proper Islam in a certain way, and basically as kind of, in a sense, assigning a value or attributing an identity to certain groups of people to say, okay, well, like, in order for you to be this, you have to be this, this, and this. I think that's really hard to do because everyone's different,
Muslim Americans and American Muslims, whatever you want to say, put it, either way, who have really contributed significantly to American culture and to Western civilization while keeping, their own cultural heritage and roots and, upholding their own spirituality and religiosity. So I think that it's very important not to see things as either or. Either you are an American or you are a Muslim, because I know so many Muslim Americans who have been very successful in their own careers, in their own professional life, while at the same time upholding their own faith and their own traditions, because these are not mutually exclusive.
We have a female graduate from our senior class this year. She's going to MIT next. Full scholarship. She also got a full Banneker scholarship to University of Maryland, full ride.
Wow.
And this particular graduate is also a black belt in Tang Soo Do, and she learned everything here. We have a martial arts school downstairs, like with all the mats and all that, and she got her black belt there, and she also memorized the entire Quran, like the whole thing, word by word. So, and that's also something she did here. So you have the traditional, you have the purely academic success that she's had, and also she's a very empowered woman. She's a poetry winner. She's won prizes in poetry.
For me, it's a lot being a Muslim girl standing on the sideline of a football field of a Division I school, and it's something that a lot of people can say nor have the opportunity to do.
Two of my identities, my personal identities, that I find really difficult to find saliency in is my identity as a Muslim and my identity as an American. It's really hard for me to say Muslim American because I feel like to the Muslim community, it might be a betrayal to call myself an American. To the American community, it might be a betrayal to call myself a Muslim. And it's really hard because those are both really, really important parts of my life. And I think it's a struggle that a lot of Muslim Americans face, to be able to say something like that and not be seen as, well, you have to choose. You have to choose one or the other because you can't be both. But you can be. And hey, that's what I identify as. And I think that's a really difficult thing for people to see.
That is something which is very important to acknowledge, because some people, when you say American Muslim or Muslim American, people think, oh, these newcomers who are just new immigrants who just came to the US. And that is not true. There's been a museum which is called the Museum of Islamic Heritage. And the Museum of Islamic Heritage really talks about some of the examples of the early pioneers, the early comers who came to this country, to the US from the very, very beginning of America. And they helped to build American society in so many different ways and so many different venues, not only education, agriculture, architecture, in all the different fields and all different walks of life. But that is something that many people may not know or may not talk about. Whenever you say American Muslim or Muslim American, they think only of newcomers and immigrants. And I think this is something which needs to be changed, and people need to acknowledge the fact that there were Muslim Americans from the very, very beginning of this country.
Muslims themselves often identify a golden age of Islamic civilization, and that is very often identified with the period of the Abbasid Caliphate, the heyday of the Abbasid Caliphate, from the 8th century of the Common Era till the Abbasid dynasty falls in the mid-13th century. But the flourishing period of the Caliphate actually is over long before that. But it is a time of particular cultural collaboration, cross-fertilization between various transcultural influences that reach back into traditions of late antiquity or even antiquity, with Greek philosophy, with other influences, Persian philosophy and so on. And there is a specific role that non-Muslim scientists, non-Muslim specialists of old languages, of old sciences play in bringing about this flourishing period.
And there is a verse in the Holy Quran that says, if God so wished, He would have created you all into one nation, but He has created you into nations and tribes so that you would get to know each other. So diversity is something which is acknowledged and in fact celebrated in the Holy Quran and in other religious scriptures, because this is God's will, that we are different, but within this difference there is also beauty, and there is also strength, and there is also value. If we are able to really admire and appreciate this value and bring it out to the light, we have a lot to gain and we have a lot to benefit from.
And you work hard, you're going to be able to get things done. But that's not always the case, because there's systems in place that don't always allow for the progression of certain identities in certain ways. Basically what I'm saying is that there's an imbalance, there's inequity. And as much as people can try to break that system, you can't. All you can do is work internally with yourself to provide yourself with the best things possible.
10 years, 15 years after 9/11, there's a need to enter back into the center of society and into asserting their place in a campus community. But then, when they decide to do that, it's very difficult for them to agree on the appropriate way, because a campus, on the one hand, it can be a very highly politicized terrain. On the other hand, our campus in particular, I think, is a campus, and rightly so, that tries to emphasize interaction.
I mean, the university has been absolutely fantastic with respect to supporting, the Muslim Student Association and United Muslim Relief. For starters, they've provided us with a prayer room on campus in Coalfield House, which serves as a great, not only as a great place to conduct religious activities and prayers, but also as a place for social events. And to the best of my knowledge, the university has never placed any unnecessary restrictions on either the Muslim Student Association or United Muslim Relief with respect to the community service and awareness events.
Occasionally, I attend the Friday prayers on campus. There's a special place here on campus for Muslim students, faculty, and staff to perform their Friday prayer sermon. And other than that, I have been involved also with the MSA, the Muslim Student Association, and I have been the advisor of the Muslim Women's Association in Maryland and on campus, which is really the sister branch of MSA. Now they're both integrated together. And I've been trying to offer as much help and advice as much as I can to Muslim students on campus and help them with issues like interfaith activities and interfaith dialogue. I attended many of their events and meetings and gave them advice, especially on how to build bridges of common understanding and dialogue with non-Muslim students, students of other faith, Christians and Jews and others on campus.
And this campus is a really great place to be for me as a Muslim woman. But I understand that might not be the experience for every single person. And there's a lot that goes into identity and empowerment that I think affects people's experiences. So for me, this has been a great place to be.
Almost every activity and extracurricular that I've been a part of on campus has helped me to integrate the two. A great example would be one of my roommates freshman year. He was a devout Christian. So when I would wake up for the first prayer of the day at sunrise, he would also wake up and read the Bible for about an hour each morning before classes started. So we regularly discussed each of our faiths, our similarities and our differences, and that has been extended to the two living learning programs I've been a part of, and almost every extracurricular as well.
Attitude is the biggest thing, and that's the advice that I would give, to always have a positive attitude, even knowing that things won't always go your way, and things may very well be worse off in some ways because of the negative stereotypes of Muslims in the media. And it's just the way things are.
And something I didn't have prior to coming to college, actually in high school, being a Muslim was kind of like outlandish. It was also like the standout. I wasn't mixed with the rest of the group. So coming to Maryland, it was almost a culture shock for me. I had gone to a school where I was the only Muslim person. So coming to an institution where there are so many more Muslims, and then not only that, so many people from Pakistan, which is my ethnic background, and things of that nature, it was really eye-opening for me because I haven't ever been around so many people of the same culture, religious background as me, and it was a little bit more comfortable for me to go to class and if I felt like practicing a hijab or practicing my faith or speaking openly about my faith, something that I hadn't really done before, because no one really had the same opinion previously. Now having people who were on almost the same page as me and understood kind of where I was coming from, I think the University of Maryland as an institution has done an amazing job. We have such a diverse campus, so that's been a really big deal for me. I think I felt more welcome because of that.
I'm Sherwyn. I'm from Indonesia. I majored in physics here, and I would like to share with you about my own experience having interacted with my friends in school and in the society. Basically, most of them are Muslims, and I like to interact with them because they have they're very kind, and basically they learn a lot from their own Quran, and I can see that for those of them who have practiced according to what the Quran said, they spread love as what their God has said, and I have interacted well with them as well. And my teachers who taught me back in the elementary school and primary school, and sometimes they also show me a lot of not only kindness but guidance on moral conduct. And from them I learned how to be a good person and how to serve the society well.
I worked with United Muslim Relief in their food drive for the Capital Area Food Bank. I was really excited about it because they actually reached out to my organization, the Student Labor Action Project, to help co-sponsor the event, and they reached out to a lot of other organizations as well. So I like the fact that they were able to bring a lot